Hello and welcome back to the only show that got into a mistaken altercation with Figure and Dan's child for calling him a son of a Bith. I'm Max.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Luke.
And this is Force for Thought.
All right, hello and welcome back. Today we are getting into the Easter spirit, and we will be celebrating all of the best and worst resurrections from the dead in the Star Wars universe. So before we take our eye off the ball, let's give a quick honorable mention to Jesus Christ, the original.
The OG, the GOAT.
Good job, Jesus, laying the foundation for all of us.
As we all know,
then,
without Jesus, we wouldn't have Star Wars. There was a direct correlation there, so yes.
Exactly. So without any further ado, I'm ready to just get right into it because my list is actually longer than I thought it was going to be because I rattled off like the 2 or 3 that everyone's thinking already, and then I kept going like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So let's get the easy ones out of the way. The most top of mind, Palpatine. He rose from the dead. How do we feel about it? We've talked about it briefly, and we always say like, oh, it's a conversation for another time. This seems like that time. I've said before, the idea of bringing him back was a bad idea. The writing decision, it was not very well perceived, and the execution of it was fantastic. Ian McDiarmid, the effects, his creepy little hands growing back, the dyad, I loved all of it that ended up happening, but I still can't get over the fact that it was a bad idea.
The execution, yep. You're saying you're separating that from the writing of it.
Yes,
I guess the storytelling aspect of it as well. Because I guess that's kind of how I feel as well. It felt super uncalled for because I feel like they laid zero groundwork for that in Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. So obviously it threw everyone through a loop. I think had they, let's be honest, they didn't go into this with that great of a plan. So had they just gone into this with a plan, knew that that's where they were going from the get-go, maybe they could have laid some seeds for that foundation that could have sprouted into a more rewarding payoff, but unfortunately that didn't happen. I agree with you. I think Ian McDiarmid was amazing. I think the performance was awesome. They made him look creepy and eerie, and all that's awesome, and I think we're getting a lot of cracks being filled in now, specifically with things like Bad Batch and Project Necromancer and all those things, which are tying into Palpatine's obsession with cloning and all that, kind of playing into him cloning himself and surviving into The Rise of Skywalker. So I like that. I think over time it's going to get better. It's going to age better. But yeah, I mean, in practice, wasn't that well done. So I don't know. I don't know if there's like a scale for this. I would give it like a 4 out of 10 because the idea makes sense. I'm not opposed to the idea of bringing back Palpatine. I think it was just done poorly.
That's the opposite of what I'm saying. I'm saying the idea was really, really bad, but it was done really well.
Okay, then I guess I disagree with you. Other than the performance and the makeup and the effects and all that stuff. Like the logistics of it was good. Just very poor writing, and how they did it was poor.
I think when I said that last time, it was during our Valentine's Day episode about Luke and Leia, and I said that the writing decision to have Luke and Leia be twins was great, but the execution of it was horrible. So that's the other side of this coin, where it can be a good idea and done really poorly, or it can be a really bad idea and done really well.
I'm right in the middle of, I think, both of you, in the fact that when you're watching the movie, you just accept it and you roll with it, and it's very cool because you're just like, okay, Palpatine's a character I know, I like the way it's being done, but it almost is a half measure too. I want it to be a bit more creepy, just see more of him. I feel like we get flashes and glimpses, and there's no actual big reveal. I don't know. I feel like
that's a crazy comment. I feel like The Rise of Skywalker was the maximum amount of creepy I could even tolerate in a Star Wars movie. Like, I can't imagine it going any darker than that.
I just feel like they did it. I mean, just do, I think, more of that. I think you get glimpses of them, but I also disagree that I think it is a bad idea because it undercuts the entire Skywalker saga, and it becomes the Palpatine saga since he is the literal through line of all 9 movies. And on top of that, it's like, I know I like the idea that no one ever dies, like in a theoretical sense, but like not an actual sense. And I think that like Palpatine, and again, it makes sense, I guess, technically within what they're trying to go for. Again, it comes out of nowhere. They are trying to rely too much on a character that we know, but it's again, the execution is done very well in the fact of how it looks, but in the writing, like we were just talking about, is very bad. And then I feel like they just do half measures the entire time also.
Yeah.
But once you're watching Rise of Skywalker, it's like, okay, I'm buckling up, I'm in for this ride, and it's fine every single time.
A more jarring writing idea than opening up your movie with the dead speak, Palpatine's alive. Like, how does that get past the rough draft stage?
Yeah.
Imagine in 1983 transporting to the future and seeing that and being like, huh?
It was actually a biblical reference. The Romans went to Pilate and they said, somehow Jesus has returned.
Stupid joke.
But I agree with you, Matt, that it kind of turns the Skywalker saga into the Palpatine saga. So I know I just said that I don't hate the idea of it. To be clear, this wasn't the only problem that I think the sequel trilogy had. I did think it had more problems than just that, and I think that is one where I think they could have brought back Palpatine in a way that makes sense, while still also focusing more on Skywalker instead of just kind of, shoehorning it at the very end by making Rey an honorary Skywalker. Which, that
Yeah.
I understand. That's something that I would give. I'm losing myself in my thought now if this is exactly what Luke just said or the exact opposite. I give that a great idea but terrible execution for Rey being a Skywalker. But there's other issues going on with it. I think Palpatine coming back to make him the overarching bad guy throughout the entire story instead of just the first 6 and someone completely different for the last 3, it makes sense. I understand the desire to do it, especially in JJ's shoes, right, where he kind of had to wrap things up and he just didn't know where to go from there, which, whatever. Like I said, indicative of bigger problems.
2 quick things. Sorry, not to get hung up on Palpatine, but I almost wish they did the opposite of what they did in the original trilogy, if that was the plan kind of all along, which we know it wasn't, but if it was, have Palpatine be in the first one, and then slowly wean him off. Kind of, again, it's kind of that gradient. So, he's mentioned in A New Hope, he's seen in Empire, then he's in Return. I would have liked if he was in, Force Awakens. He's like, then maybe he dies or whatever, then he's mentioned, and then he's completely basically gone or whatever.
Snoke treatment.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, literally, then Snoke takes over, basically, and then you kind of have that almost reverse of that, honestly, I think would be cool. And then the last thing is, I wonder, we're talking about how they were filling in all these cracks and stuff, and I wonder if Star Wars would go down some of these routes they've been going down, and like filling in those gaps or retconning, whatever you want to use. We prefer to say filling in these gaps because that's just what I think the fandom is come to expect. But I wonder if would Filoni and the rest of the gang go down this road of cloning and everything if they didn't feel the need to justify some of those decisions. I just wonder if they were I wonder if how we can. You don't think that if they never brought Palpatine back, that this would be a storyline they would even consider? Because I don't know if they.
I mean, maybe they'd consider it. I think if Episode 9 did not have Palpatine in it at all, Bad Batch would have been an entirely different show.
Oh, okay, yes. So we are on the same page. Sorry, I thought you were saying the opposite. I was like, Luke, I don't know if that's.
No, I was agreeing with you that no, he would not do this.
I disagree that
it's
would have
weird
been
though,
a
isn't it?
completely different show. I mean, they really just make a couple references to Project Necromancer. I mean, season 3, the first 3 or 4 episodes dealt heavily with it, but other than that, I think Bad Batch still would have existed primarily in the format that we saw it. Maybe it just wouldn't have placed such an emphasis on Palpatine in this project.
I mean, you just have to change one big thing, that the Empire's hunting Omega for Project Necromancer to be the Empire's hunting Omega for something else. But hunting Omega for Project Necromancer is the plot of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
know. I guess I agree. It could have just been anything.
Right.
It's just odd. I guess I'd love to see Star Wars not playing catch up at some point in our lives, maybe again. Is what I'm coming to realize.
Would you though? Because I don't hate this format that we have.
Yeah, and no, because
I don't either.
Even if they did do it,
I wanted to fill in the gaps. Sorry, Max.
I think they're going to fill in the gaps no matter what, though. They're going to fill in the gaps whether or not
Yes.
it was well received or not. No matter what they did in Episode 9, I think they still had material to go back and fill the gaps. I don't think they're doing it intentionally, retconning it because it's like, oh, this was crap, now we got to make it good. Because I don't think Dave Filoni for a second thought that about the prequel trilogy. I think a lot of other people at Lucasfilm and Disney might have.
Yeah.
But Dave Filoni loved the prequels, and then he still went back and kind of filled in the gaps. Which is the angle that it needs to come from if they are going to be doing this. Is from an angle of appreciation and not, retconning and trying to make.
I also love he's a sneaky snake. Can you imagine being like, oh, we should fix this because everyone hates it, but I secretly love it, but no one else knows that. Like, that's a great thing to be like, I'll take it on.
You get to have your
it's
cake
the
and eat
long
it too.
call. Exactly.
all
Good
those
for
years
Dave
working with
Filoni.
George Lucas, Dave Filoni's just rubbing his eyes like, oh God, this fucking guy.
Matt, do not feel badly about bogging down on Palpatine because that is the meat and potatoes of this episode. He is the Jesus Christ of the Star Wars universe in terms of most impactful resurrection from the dead, right? I have other people on my
there's
list,
Really, only
but
one
his
other.
his is definitely the most talkable one.
Yeah,
But
I
if-
mean,
if-
man, we're starting out with a bang.
We are, because I didn't want to just beat around the bush waiting to talk about Palpatine for 20 minutes.
Because if
like,
we talk about the
we
other
all
ones,
know
we'd
that
be secretly comparing it to this without explicitly mentioning it anyway. So it makes sense. I'm with
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
You got to start with Palpatine. So in a similar vein, I would say the next largest resurrection from the dead, Darth Maul. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to grade them in terms of magnitude.
10
I
out of
guess
10, though.
most dead. Palpatine was the most dead. Darth Maul was the second most dead person that has been resurrected from the dead. It's sliced in half, thrown into a bottomless pit, and forgotten about for like 10 years. And then all of a
Yep.
sudden he's in Star Wars again. It almost...
Thank God.
It is such a bummer that the unbelievability of it is very similar to Palpatine, but all of the Star Wars community is on board for the Darth Maul one and not for the Palpatine one for pretty similar reasons. Like, there is a pretty apples to apples comparison here, and one is hailed as great and one is hailed as horrible. So that's a bummer for Palpatine, but I'm in that boat. The Darth Maul resurrection was
Yeah.
amazing.
It's just how it's done, I think, right? And then it's like, nothing relies on Darth Maul in Rebels. You're just like, oh shit. Or like in Clone Wars, it's like, oh my God, it's great to see him, but it's also intertwined with other stories. But if without Darth Maul, all those things still work. It's just better because of him. Where Rise of Skywalker, they were like, well, it worked for him, so let's try to do it with Palpatine, but it's like shoehorned in, and it needs to be done within 2 hours versus, very craftfully, nicely told stories within
Yeah.
these other two animated shows.
2
And they just did
hours
something
where-
cool with him.
2 hours where
He's got
Palpatine
spider
was
legs.
the fourth most important character in the movie.
Yes, he's
It's
the
a tough-
fourth most important villain in that movie.
It's a tough job for sure. But yeah, Darth Maul, I mean, every part of that arc, from the spider legs and when he went insane to Mother Talzin purifying him, for lack of a better word, whatever she did to make him cool, give him the robot legs, and then
Yep.
everything that he goes on to do after that. Like, that's just the act of coming back, which with Palpatine, it was like literally just the dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities, some considered to be unnatural. And that's how he's back. So that's not as good. But then it's the
No.
what he does after it's back, and Darth Maul again takes the cake like 10 times over. Everything with Mandalore and Ahsoka, and then in Rebels and Crimson Dawn, which I'm again holding judgment for because we haven't seen quite so much of that story, but I'm certain that we will soon, and it's going to be amazing. Like, Darth Maul is such a cool character.
That's really.
And you
the
get a great
only-
emotional death. Second death.
It's and a great emotional death.
That's really the only kind of period of Maul's life that we're missing now, isn't it? Is between Crimson Dawn and Malachor. Do we know how he ended up on Malachor?
No, and it's killing me, Max.
I didn't think so.
He was stranded there.
Yeah. So, again, going back to this theory of filling in gaps, it doesn't need to be because it was bad. I mean, like, I don't feel like people are like, oh my gosh, we need to address that because that's so stupid that he just showed up on Malachor in Rebels. It's like, no, actually, we kind of accept that. I remember not accepting it before I ever watched Clone Wars and just watching the movies, and I just found out. People were like, oh, did you see that Darth Maul is back? And I was like, that's so stupid. How is he back? Like,
Mhm.
he was definitely dead. And they're like, oh yeah, they gave him like robotic spider legs. When you just hear it, it just it doesn't gel well with you. And so you're like, okay, that's ridiculous. And it put a big bad taste in my mouth, and is why I didn't get into Clone Wars until so much later. And then when I
Mhm.
finally did watch it, yeah, I was 100% on board. But one thing that that show did really well was, well, it was trying to do a lot of things, but they didn't set out immediately to do this one thing. They gave you kind of like 3, 4 seasons with the show to kind of get yourself acclimated before they started to do something like this. Or when they did start to go into this storyline and everything, you had already met Talzin, the Night Sisters, introduced to the idea of magic and all that stuff. So it kind of made sense. And by the time you're watching it, you're like, yeah, this only feels natural. And then you kind of take a step back and I think like, oh, they brought him back with spider legs. That's silly. But I'm with it. I'm with it 100%. I think this one is different than what I said about Palpatine, because I think the decision to bring back Maul is wild. I don't think they had to do it at all. But goddamn, if that's not a 10 out of 10 on execution, I mean, that was perfect. I love it. I mean, I'm also watching the Clone Wars right now, and I just finished rewatching that arc. So yeah, Chef's Kiss, it's perfect. All for that one.
I would like to note that I'm not saying this is a ripoff because it's not, but do they kill off Mr. Freeze and the New Adventures of Batman the animated series, and then does he come back with spider legs? Yes, he does. And so I feel like, comme si comme ça, but
was that
it's
before the
semi-similar.
Clone Wars? Which one was a
It wasn't.
ripoff?
You
It
talking about
was
the most
indeed
recent one?
significantly. No. This is in the 90s.
Oh, did they do that in the 90s
Oh.
animated series? I do not remember that.
Yeah, the New Adventures though. So to me, I don't even count this as. It's the one that it's the same voice actors and everything. It's just a different animation.
That sounds
But
stupid. They bring back Freeze with robotic spider legs.
I'll show you a picture right now. So
Ridiculous. I'm not getting on board with
You
that.
can't make that work
Here-
in TV.
He is a great action figure. Let me tell you. Actually, here's a picture of the action figure. For some reason, that comes up before. Where's my camera at? There it is. There he is.
Oh,
just
you know
the
what? I
head.
feel like I have seen that
Just the head.
before. Yeah.
Just the head Futurama style.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Max, that's funny that you said that you were so not on board with Maul coming back before you watched the Clone Wars. And then you mentioned magic in like the same sentence, because that was my sticking point when I started watching the Clone Wars and they introduced magic, and I was like, no, there's no magic in Star Wars. It's the Force. That's stupid. And then that really softened me to being like, well, it's all magic. It's just a new word for it. It's all the same Force. It's all the same stuff,
Yeah.
and it's all made up. So that was my real turning point with my fandom in Clone Wars.
I disagree with that.
I
though.
agree,
I mean, are you
though.
saying that magic and the Force are just two different names for the same thing?
Yeah,
I don't think so. I think magic is
interesting.
its own
I
thing.
agree. I
think it's
agree
the
with
same
Max.
power.
But I mean, there's
Interesting.
There's different ways
I
to
don't think
use
it
it.
is.
You think it's just like, I mean, I can get on board with that if you say like, well, there's a lot of different pathways to the Force. There's the light side, the dark side, and even maybe it's not even a binary. Maybe there's all sorts of different ways to use it, and that's what the magic is. But I mean, it definitely has like its own distinct, like visual and like audio gimmicks and everything, which I think kind of cues you
Mhm.
into the fact that it is something different.
I don't think it's different. I agree that it looks different, and that is to cue you in that this is different because it's not the light side or the dark side. But there's whatever, half a dozen different Force sects now in the High Republic. They've introduced several more, whose names I forgot. The Guardians of the Wills, the Sorcerers of Tund, to name two, and I guess that's all I'll be able to right now. But
There's like the
I
hidden
love-
path or the path of the hidden hand or something like that.
the Path of the Open Hand, they're not Force users. They are aggressively anti-Force users.
Ow.
That was just a religious sect that doesn't use the Force. Lame, but I
I was
think
gonna
all of them
say,
are just different interpretations and applications of the same cosmic force.
Interesting. I also think it's different as well, but I feel like, so Luke, you're saying that like magic or the Force or anything else is like a religion, in the fact that it's like, just say the Force is like Christianity and the dark side, just say, is Catholicism, and the light side is being Lutheran, and then you have magic, which just say is Judaism. So you have all these different sectors then of it. Because I do agree with I agree with what you said, Luke, in the fact that it's like it's all the same, in the fact that it's like it's made up and whatever. But like I disagree, and I agree with Max in the fact that I think magic is a different in this magical galaxy. I think there are different sectors and factions. It's the same thing, I think, where in the real world you can be like, oh, there's aliens and ghosts. Like those are all paranormal, but they're different things. And I think that's how I would view these two sectors of these, I don't know, like this mythical thing, mythical aspect. But because I think they also do different things in a weird way, magic and the force within this context that we've seen it. I think they maybe have some overlap, but I think they definitely have distinct things that they both do.
Let's go back to the analogy with real world religions, because that was making sense to me. So if the light side is Christianity and the dark side is Lutheranism, and
well,
then
I think I said it the other way, Catholicism. But yes, go on.
Oh, Catholicism.
No,
well, either
I'm just
way,
kidding.
all of those religions fall under the same umbrella of like worshiping the same God and having the same Bible and having the same general belief and magic system. And then to me, I would say that the Night Sisters are like another sect of Christianity, Protestantism or whatever, where, again, it's still in that same boat. But what I'm hearing from you guys is that you think that magic is like a completely different religion, like the Greek gods, like completely different structure and power abilities. And
yeah, I think so.
That's
There's a
definitely
bit of
how I was
overlap.
leaning going into it. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
I'm in the same boat. Also,
but it's
I'm
still
glad
real,
I
though.
brought this up.
I mean, in universe.
right.
And I'm trying to
Yeah,
think
you
of
just
the
like-
acolyte. What did the witches on Brendock use the Force, but they didn't call it magic. They called it the string. What do they refer to it as?
Oh, it was something just like the string. I forget what it was too.
I was trying to think
Shoot.
of it. The thread.
The thread?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was something
Ooh,
like that.
Boy.
But I guess they were using both, weren't they? Because Mother Anastasia definitely used magic. Like when she transported herself. Like that was Dathmirian type witch magic there.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the exact example of when she used magic and when she used the Force, but I would expect her to be able to use both, interchange. I mean, a combination of the two, because I think it's all the same thing.
So you're saying Obi-Wan is like, Luke, check out this lightsaber. Your father used it in the Clone Wars. Also, here's some sleight of hand.
I don't follow.
No, it's not,
No,
not
it's a
that
magic
kind of
trick.
magic. Okay.
Oh, that magic.
Also, I should have said pick
Sleight
a
of
card.
hand magic.
Damn
That's a fire joke. I'm sorry.
I think I need to go back and rewatch The Acolyte now to find out more about the Witches of Brendock. But I think if they use the Force and magic, that would confirm for me that they are different things.
Really, I would think that would confirm for you that they are the same thing.
I can see why you would think that. It doesn't for me for some reason.
All right. This is one of those rare moments where I disagree, but I feel like I am on the same page with what it is that you think, and you're on the same page with what it is that I think.
This
And we
is-
actually do just agree to disagree. It's not just a failure to communicate. So that's nice.
We're making strides here at Force for Thought.
Moving on to the Night Sisters and magic. Asajj Ventress. She was also very, very dead. And there's not much to say about this because she's definitely very much alive right now, and we have no justification why. At the time of recording, it is April 15th of 25. We, or I guess
literally
this episode's coming out
I
this
had
week.
to turn my head to look at the date on my computer behind my camera because I was like, "Oh, when's this coming out?" Because I might have a totally different opinion on this. As of May 4th,
Not the
we
first
might
time.
get a better backstory, and I might feel different going into this. Before we're watching Tales of the Underworld, I am deeply disappointed by the decision to bring her back for, as of right now, seemingly no reason. They brought her back during Bad Batch, and I'll always remember everyone started freaking out, being like, "Yo, her story was told during this book with Quinlan Voss. The name of it is escaping me. Dark Disciple."
Dark Disciple.
And they were like, "Yep, we know about Dark Disciple. It will be consistent with the book." And people were like, "Okay, perfect. Let's buckle down and we'll see what this is about." And then they just don't address it at all. So people were like, "Okay, were you guys lying? Were you?" Maybe they were lying. Matt, maybe this is where your theory
They
comes
were not
in, where they have
lying.
to go to Dave Filoni and they're like, "Dave, you got to help us out, man. We just said that we did this on purpose. We have no idea. We didn't know this book existed. Please
And
tell
he's
her
like-
story." And he's like, "Well, she's not really a Sith anymore. I don't know what to do with this."
Like, perfect. We'll have a mini series around it. 3-episode arc.
So as of right now, I give this one 2 huge thumbs down for the time being. Little asterisk, subject to change. May 4th.
So if you were hanging out with the Rizzler, AJ, Big Justice, would get a Doom.
This is a doom. Doom or gloom. This is a doom. Darth
I like
Maul.
how you do like a little
5
jersey.
big booms.
Can you give it to me? Oh, we're so sorry to hear about your brother. He gets 2 big booms. But one thing too we forgot to mention with Maul, and maybe just his storyline is just oh my god, I'm gonna say Asajj Ventress. That's not the person's name. Savage
Jocelyn?
Opress.
Oh, Savage.
Which is another great storyline we got too. So sorry, not to
Did he die?
backtrack.
Was he resurrected
Savage?
from the dead? I couldn't remember. He was enhanced, but I don't think he was dead. He was just a puny little wimpy boy. And then she did what is very similar to a resurrection ceremony, and he just got yoked.
Just an
Yes,
upgrade. It
he
was just
got
a Pokemon
resurrected.
upgrade to Savage 2.0.
Yep.
An evolution.
Yeah.
But just that story within that Maul universe, or that Maul story, was cool.
Yeah, it was a big Savage fan. Probably the worst name in Star Wars. Least
Savage Opress,
creative effort put
yeah.
into it. But
I don't like either
it was
name.
cool.
So this is going to be a big backstory, but there's this movie that Matt and I watched as part of like a student-made film in college, where they were talking about geocaching, and one of the characters.
Max, I was thinking of this last night.
I think about this all the time, and one
Me
of
too.
the characters says, "What's geocaching?" And it bothers me to no end because I'm like, this is a verbal conversation. Like, you guys, if you don't know what this word is, you don't know how it's spelled. Like, why would you say it's cacking? You know what I mean? So I'm like, that's just terrible writing. Like, you would have to read this first and not know how it's pronounced. And this is the exact opposite. I'm like, that line just makes no sense. Anyways, I will say there was a similar moment in the Clone Wars where I forget who, I guess it's Count Dooku, puts a bounty on Savage. And they're at a bar, and these bounty hunters are looking at the bounties on the hollow, and this one guy goes, "Who is this Savage Opress?" And it really bothers me because I'm like, those are both words. Like, why would you say savage like the word, but then oppress like not oppress? You know what I mean? Like, you should do it one way or the other. You should either assume it's a name and say Savage Opress, or assume that these are words and say Savage Oppress. And it's the fact that you just like did one but not the other just because it's the opposite of how his name is actually pronounced, it really bothered me.
It's I don't know the exact scene you're talking about, but it's gonna really bother me when I rewatch that, because I think about that scene all the time. Not that it was a great short film, not that they're listening, but like I think about that all the time too. But
it was a student film. I recognize that I made worse, so
trust me when I say this, you did it.
That Savage Opress line from the bar, I do remember that scene, and I am equally bothered now. I am so instantaneously on board with your rage. Like, I have never gone from never thinking about something to thinking about something with such anger so quickly. Yeah, that's bullshit. You're absolutely right, Max.
Other than that, 10 out of 10.
I know the names aren't as complicated to say, or there's no other way really to say them, I don't think, but our friend of the podcast, Josh Vanderzijn, who also does the intro and outro music.
The Music Man.
Yep, the Music Man says words and names specifically wrong all the time.
On purpose?
I don't know.
We don't think so.
Like, for years, we would be like, we'd be talking, and he'd randomly be like, "Oh, you know how in the first Iron Man or the second Iron Man, Don Cheadle takes over as War Machine?" We're like,
that's not genuine. That cannot be real.
No, I swear to God it is. And he also called Lenny Kravitz, and we're
that
like,
one I get. Don Cheadle, you don't just impose a French accent on a 40-year-old black man's name.
That's the same thing with Lenny Kravitz, where it's like, he's been around for like a very long time. Like, there's no way you didn't hear his name at some point. But there's a couple other versions, other examples. But those
Not
are my
only
two
hearing
favorite.
the names though. I feel like both of those examples are also spelled fairly phonetically.
He just
Lenny Kravitz is at least an outlandish name where it's like, I could see that being said Kravitz. Don Cheadle. That is hilarious to me.
I know. He is not, but by the amount of shit that we give him or gave him. Let me tell you, he is not joking. He would have. I think he would have gladly said he was joking, so we would stop harassing him.
Very excited to clip this and send this to him now. We're gonna get cease and desist to stop using his music immediately.
He listens. He listens. He takes a lot of long car rides.
All right, so that's Asajj Ventress. Jury's out on that one so far. Waiting for more information. Now that is our villains of Death and Resurrection. Now we can get into the hero stage. Qui-Gon Jinn. Now there's obviously going to be more than one Jedi here, but Qui-Gon gets special recognition for doing it first. Like Yoda and Obi-Wan and Anakin were all taught how to do this by Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon just figured it out. What a G. That is so impressive. How many Jedi and how many thousands of generations before him? And the dude just figured it out. Good job, Qui-Gon. That's why you're the GOAT.
The Force Goat. Do you think? So we're talking about him being a Force Ghost specifically, right?
Yeah.
And like, are we just specifically talking about Kenobi? I guess, since that's the only time we see him as a Force Ghost.
It's the only
in
time we
Clone
see
Wars.
him, but yeah, he's meant. Oh yeah, we do see him in Clone Wars, don't we?
Mhm.
Do we see him as a Force ghost? That's more of a vision. What's the
What's the
difference?
difference?
I don't know.
Oh, well,
Because
no,
he
I
teaches
think
Yoda how to-
you're
He's mentioned at the
Hallucinating.
end of Revenge of the Sith. So
Yeah.
I mean, in the main movies, we know that he figured it out, but we don't see him.
I mean, he definitely figured it out. And that's why in the Clone Wars he teaches Yoda, and then Yoda teaches Obi-Wan, who doesn't need to teach Anakin because Anakin also kind of figures it out, and or the Force just gives him that ability because he's the chosen one and also kind of the GOAT. We can talk about Anakin more right now if you guys want to, because Yoda and Obi-Wan got taught, and so there's a certain you lose something when we're talking about the impressiveness of the feat. But yeah, Anakin and Qui-Gon just sort of did it.
Yeah,
I
I remember
think
there was a
as
theory that
a-
in order to accomplish a Force ghost, you have to die one with the Force, meaning like you have to be at peace, and that's why like a lot of the Jedi who died during the Clone Wars and stuff didn't accomplish it. But that doesn't really make sense for Qui-Gon because he
What about all the
definitely
ones
died in
before?
the heat of battle.
That too.
But the other three, you could definitely say it could probably apply. I don't know. I wasn't prepared to talk about this, and now I'm going back and forth in my head. It's not a bodily resurrection; it is a spiritual resurrection. Why was Darth Vader allowed to be a Force ghost? Yeah, I guess he was,
Man,
because he's the
so-
chosen one.
Yeah.
There's
Leia
also-
was
I
a
think
Force
there's a-
ghost too. I guess Leia could have been. taught by
Oh,
Luke,
I did not
but that
have
makes sense.
Luke or Leia on my list. Yeah, we can talk about them.
Well,
That
Luke
slipped
makes
my mind.
sense. Leia makes a little bit less sense, but at the same time, no, it makes just as much sense. It's off camera. It's all off camera. But I mean,
Yeah.
Luke would have learned from Obi-Wan and Yoda, and Luke trained Leia, so it makes sense that he would have taught her.
At
I-
what stage do you think? I mean, you obviously need a certain level of training to learn becoming Force ghostness, and that's got to be the thing that you're most excited to teach someone. Because what if they die before you teach it to them? And so he's got to be just like grinding out XP until she gets to the minimum level that she can learn this ability and then teach it right away.
Hurry up and lift this rock. You're gonna love what comes next. Step 1,
I,
pebbles.
as
Step
a-
2, mortality.
as a person who is very much a doer while learning, I would be a very bad Force ghost because I would have to just consistently attempt suicide to be like, is this going to work?
That's
so
like
it's-
that scene in Avatar: The Last Airbender where they're learning how to redirect lightning, and then Zuko's like, "Okay, I'm ready. Hit me." And Iroh's like, "Are you kidding me? I'm not gonna strike you with lightning. That's a horrible idea. This is a last defense. Do not ever. I hope you never ever have to use this."
Did he have to use it?
He did, and it was awesome. But yeah, you can't practice this.
Not
You
to
cannot.
revisit something so morbid, but Matt did have a Force for Thought, like one of the first ones that we did, about how suicide would affect your ability to become a Force ghost. And
Suicide Force ghost, yeah.
yeah, I guess
I think it
in
would affect
my-
it negatively.
in my theory that you have to die like one with the Force or whatever, it would probably make an impact. But Anakin made it. I don't know. I see what you're saying, Matt. I feel like if I was taught that, I'd be like, yeah, let's find out.
Yeah,
I think
That's,
Qui-Gon, Yoda, and Obi-Wan, and Luke and Leia learned and / were taught how to become a Force ghost. I think whether that happened or not, Anakin still would have become a Force ghost. I think that's just a perk of being the chosen one.
Is the
And then
Force Ghost
he
a
gets to go to-
resurrection, though? I mean, is it something that doesn't already exist outside of the other Jedi? And what I'm trying to build to is all the other Jedi whose voices you hear at the end of The Rise of Skywalker. You don't see them, but you hear them.
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Were they there?
Something I was
that
gonna.
The Force? Are they...
Yeah, that obviously was a hard thing for me to reconcile inside myself because the canonicity of Force Ghosts was so clear to me before then. The way I currently understand it is Rey was tapping into the cosmic force in a way that she could interact with the other Jedi, and it's not that the other Jedi were tapping into the
Okay.
cosmic force in a way that they could interact with the world.
All right.
I think that's a
I like
great
that.
way how I see Force ghosts in general, because I think if you're looking at, I'm like, okay, then do ghosts in general exist in this realm? Or like even like ghost stories, right? You have to have ghost stories. I feel like that is mentioned a couple times. And so the way I think I see Force ghosts as well is that maybe potentially you can learn how to be a Force ghost afterwards, even in the fact that if you are on another plane after you die within the Star Wars universe, you can still be like a spirit or a ghost, whatever, blah, blah, but it's like how you project to somebody else and how you are seen to somebody else is how I understand Force ghosts. Because like in that, like exactly kind of like you said, Luke, is like she could hear all these other people because they are still on another plane, but they just cannot project themselves. Like they cannot be on hanging out with Obi-Wan at the end of Kenobi, like Qui-Gon Jinn can.
We
That's
always
interesting.
think
So you're saying
of-
that there are other ghosts in Star Wars on other planes that cannot be accessed by any way we're familiar with?
Yes. That's also kind of how I feel about the real world.
Yeah, I was gonna say that could apply to our world. Okay, I like that. I can vibe with that.
we always think of the Force Ghosts as the good guys, but obviously Palpatine learned from his master a way to achieve immortality. So, can Sith?
Did he? I wouldn't say that's obvious.
Well, you think he was just
I
lying
think
about
that's
the whole
still
thing?
I think it's possible enough that he was lying about the whole thing that it's not
I guess
obvious.
if it was true, it would have probably happened. But what if? Here's a quick little thought experiment. Instead of doing a bodily resurrection of Palpatine / maybe a clone, still jury's out on that. What if they just brought him back in spirit and Return of the Jedi ends, and you're like, oh, these are all my Force Ghost buddies. Like, they're going to teach me the ways of the Force. And then the Force Awakens come back, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's this First Order. There's this evil Force rising to meet us. And then Snoke dies, and then the last shot is of a Force Ghost Palpatine. And you're like, oh no. Like, that's how Palpatine is still around. Because then you have this whole other issue of like, well, we've killed Palpatine, but now how do you get rid of a Force Ghost?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Yeah, what if you didn't
That's
like your
a-
Force Ghost? Because that's how, in Star Wars Legacy, that was a plot point that Luke kept appearing to Cade Skywalker, and Cade kept doing drugs and threatening suicide to make him stop.
You
It gets really dark,
You need
I
to
guess
get
is the
a
answer.
Catholic, you need to get a Catholic Force priest to commit an exorcism.
I think that's an interesting story. I kind of would. I mean, they're never going to do it, but I'd love to see like almost like a horror version of a Star Wars story, where there's a lot of stories, like Rosemary's Baby, where you reach out to what you think is like an angel or another being, and a devil or a demon respond. There's a lot of ghost stories where you think you're getting helped and you're not really getting helped. It's more of a demon, which kind of like medieval horror-esque stuff too. When people are praying
That's-
and you reach out, and then they reach out back to you, and then you accept, but they got
That's not that dissimilar to what Kylo Ren went through, where he thought he was communicating with Snoke and Vader, and it was really Palpatine all along. I mean,
All
it's not
bad
like he
guys,
thought he was
though.
talking to an angel, right?
Yeah, if you're talking to a Qui-Gon Jinn and you get Snoke, it's a little different.
Exactly. All right, so that's Qui-Gon. I also wanted to talk about this because I don't see myself ever having another opportunity. Kung Fu Panda, nearly perfect movie until the end when he wins the battle with Tai Lung by doing that pinky finger hold, and Tai Lung says, "Oh, Shifu never would have taught you that hold," and Poe says, "No, I just kind of figured it out," which is what happened with Qui-Gon, and I love it, and that works there. It doesn't work in Kung Fu Panda, and I hate that scene. It doesn't ruin the movie, but it brings it down significantly. Like, you can't just, even if you're the Dragon Warrior, you can't just figure out a move that vaporizes someone into gold mist. That is too far away from intuitive. I can get on board with the talking animals and the Kung Fu, and a praying mantis can be just as fearsome as an opponent as a tiger, and all that. My suspension of disbelief is never hindered until that last scene, and I just throw my hands up every time.
You can if there was an entire subplot about a bunch of villagers just randomly going missing inexplicably, because if he's just figured it out, he had to have figured it out on someone. I mean, what was he testing this on?
Yeah, that also goes to the way how you practice these once in a lifetime feats.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for indulging me there. I apologize if you haven't seen Kung Fu Panda, but that takes us
Massive
through
spoilers.
Qui-Gon. I don't really have anything else to say about Yoda, Obi-Wan, Luke, Leia, or Anakin. We kind of hit all the Force ghosts, unless you guys do, right?
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right, so that moves us into our next category of definitely dead, but only for a moment. Starting with Rey in The Rise of Skywalker. How do we feel about that one? I like the resurrection. I like the Force essence transfer. I don't love the kiss. I don't love that she died kind of vague and nondescript. Like, she was just really tired. Like, I get, Luke, that's how Luke died, and that would make sense to me. And, like, Rey definitely went through a lot, but none of it seemed like that's what killed her. And it wasn't like she walked around a little. I don't know. There's some parts that I like and some that I don't.
It's just kind of, to me, like a cheap 180. It's the same thing with the Chewie scene, too. I don't know if we're going to bring up Chewie or not, but I guess, I mean, there's no point.
I was, but I'd be fine just wrapping that up into a few non sequiturs here. Because
it's the same thing where it's like, at no point do I believe Rey's going to die. And so to me, don't even do it, right? And it's like, you could have killed Ben in other ways. You could have almost sacrificed Rey in other ways, and then there's other ways to do it. They wrote themselves into a weird hole, I think, that it's just like, we not for 1 second do I believe that she's ever gonna die within Rise of Skywalker, and I feel like, then why even do it? If there's actually no stakes, there's no point, right? Like, to me, it's just like, I don't know, it gets me every time. Like, at the end of Rise of Skywalker, like, I feel like I skipped that scene. It ends with a kiss. I don't like that either. I don't know. I dislike it. She should have just been alive the entire time and no fake out.
I kind of disagree. I don't hate it in theory, because Palpatine's whole plot was that he wanted Rey to kill her, because if he struck her down, then he would have lived on forever in her. And so it kind of worked out the only way it could, where she killed him, but then she also dies going down with him. And then she has to be brought back from the dead, and they kind of already demonstrated that with the serpent and the sinking sand scenes, as well as Grogu, before Rise of Skywalker came out. Grogu did it first. Don't forget that, because that's the only reason people didn't make as big a fuss about it as they would have otherwise. So I don't think it was there to like fake out the audience, like, oh, Rey is dead. I think they did it as like kind of a, well, I guess like you said, when they kind of just wrote themselves into a weird hole.
Yeah,
it makes sense in that was how they had to defeat Palpatine, and that the only way Rey was going to survive was being brought back from the dead, and that Kylo was the one who was going to have to do it, and that would kind of complete his redemption arc. So that part all makes sense. I don't hate that. I hate the execution. Everything Luke said, I 100% agree with. How it's just like a nondescript death. How it's like they just kind of sit there in silence with their hands over each other, bringing each other back a couple times. And it's like, there should have been something a little more, just to make it a little more obvious what was happening, maybe a little more dramatic, some sort of like audio and visual cues that they were literally draining themselves of their life force to transfer into this person, instead of just randomly bringing them back. And then the fact that they were both alive for a couple of seconds just to share that kiss. I mean, to me, it's like, if you're going to bring someone back from the dead, it's going to cost you your life, So I don't know.
right away.
Yeah.
You I don't know if you said it directly or it just made me think of it. But the idea that if you said it, if Rey kills Palpatine, then Rey also dies. Like if their life forces were somehow intertwined, and the only way to kill Palpatine was for Rey to die too, that could have been such a cool story. And then Kylo could have brought her back, and that would have been a more satisfying story. The way we got it, it very well could be, honestly. But the way we got it, it's not that clear. And one of the parts that I like most about that sequence, which to be fair, it's a relatively low bar, is that Finn is able to feel when Rey dies, which solidifies like his bond to her and his force connectivity, which I like, but then that's never brought up again, which maybe it will be in the Rey movie that Finn will almost certainly be in, should it get made, which about a 30% chance I'd say. But I like that angle that we get to see. That's the most confirmed I think we get for Finn's connection to the Force in a movie that several times could have just confirmed it very clearly.
That's a hole that they'll
All right.
definitely go back to fill the gap on.
Yeah.
But that one was
that
so
was the
big
time
that it was definitely intentional. So that's another one. I'm like, all right, let's give it time to simmer. That's the hardest part about the sequel trilogy.
Not all
it's so
holes
easy.
are plot holes.
Yeah, and it's so easy to just dunk on like all the things that we're saying right now. I want to revisit this conversation in 10 years from now, and I bet I'll have a completely different outlook on the sequel trilogy because of the 3 animated shows and 6 anthology films that made it better.
Right. Just because there's an opportunity to explore a plotline more doesn't mean that it doesn't make sense without that having been explored right now. The one that doesn't meet that criteria, well, one of them, I'm sure there's more, but Maz Kanata having Luke's lightsaber. Like, the fact that that's not addressed is not just like maybe we'll get to that later and it'll be satisfying. Like, no, you need to explain this now in this story. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case. Like, I would have liked to see Finn's Force connectivity explained in that story, but we didn't need it the same way we needed the lightsaber to be explained.
We're still waiting for that lightsaber story. I don't know if it'll ever be told, but it's either gonna never be told or they're really holding out on for something to explain it. Because that feels like that should be one of those things that is filled in almost instantly. Because I think we're all interested. We all like Maz Kanata. I feel like everyone was like, oh yeah, Maz Kanata was like really missing from Rise of Skywalker and Last Jedi. And then I feel like everyone has kind of expressed that, and she just was never brought back, never mentioned again, basically. I was like, is it something with Lupito? Like I can't tell like if it's like something with her, the actress, or what it is, but like it just she's never mentioned really ever again. Like in anything. And I was like, oh, she was a cool character I'd have liked to have seen more of.
I forget who I was talking to recently, Luke. It might have been you, but I was going on about my disdain for writers when they have a plot hole or just something generally that doesn't make sense, and so instead of addressing it, they just point it out because they think that, you know, breaking the fourth wall on it is enough to satisfy the viewer's intrigue or something. Like, it would have been so much better had they just never brought up the issue. But in both of JJ's movies, he has something that he's just like, oh, people are going to want an answer to this, but I don't have it. So I'm just going to tell them that I don't have it instead of like writing around it and just not providing an answer. Like, she could have just handed her the lightsaber and been like, I've been holding on to this for a while. I think you're going to need it, and have that be the end of it. Instead, it's, how did you get this? Oh, that's a good story for another time. It's like, okay. And then the same thing with somehow Palpatine returned. It's like, like, yeah, everyone knows that this is not making sense. Like, you don't need to go out of your way to draw attention to it. It does bother me.
Understand.
Yeah, I can't really defend either. But I can move on because that was the time that Rey just barely died for a few minutes and then was brought back, and Ahsoka did the same thing in Mortis, where she was dead, and then the father kind of resurrected her with the life force of his daughter. What do you guys think of this one? Mortis seems so out there that it's like, even if you die, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, like, but she was dead.
She was definitely dead. And they made it very clear what was happening. They had the 2 little altars, which made me think that maybe this has happened before. And, you know, he got right into position, and there was like these little visual cues, audio cues going on, and there was no doubt between what was happening in the moment.
Yeah. And it also might come into play as a substantial plot point in Ahsoka season 2 or 3 or whenever, that Ahsoka contains the life force of the daughter of Mortis.
I think that it will. And yeah, to go back to your first point, Mortis in and of itself is just so mystical that yeah, anything is fair game there. So that doesn't bother me nearly as much as whipping that out on Exegol.
All right, we touched on Chewbacca. We don't really need to talk about that more. He was never dead, and we never
Yeah.
really believed that he was.
No.
Next category is almost really, really close to dead, which is, the first one is Echo. The first time, as much as I love the Echo lives theories, let's not forget
Mhm.
that he was killed on the Citadel and then taken and turned into a Confederate think tank, and he was basically dead then too. He wasn't dead, but he got cybernetic implants and made a full recovery.
What are you saying is his second death?
When he actually died.
When did he die? I don't
I'm
remember
hoping that
his
he will be
death.
resurrected from the dead.
In Bad Batch.
Oh,
he
I'm
died?
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm confusing that with Tech.
Okay.
Never mind. Yeah.
I was like, what? Echo is not dead.
No, Echo doesn't die.
Well,
Excuse me.
Echo-
I was
Echo leaves the Bad Batch to go with Rex, but then I don't think they went back to that because Echo wasn't with
Yeah,
Rex when we saw him in Rebels.
No, Echo was with the Bad Batch at the end of the Bad Batch.
Was he?
No, he does go back with Rex. I mean, Echo's in the final battle, like on Tantus and stuff.
Hmm.
But then I don't remember. Like, he wasn't in the epilogue.
Well,
with Old Hunter.
that's gonna have to be a rewatch now. I thought that he left
Yeah.
to go with Rex. Regardless, yes, I think that one was a good resurrection. It worked well for the plot point. And Echo, no disrespect to the man, but he's like a minor enough character that like no one's flipping tables being like, how are they bringing Echo back? Like he died on the Citadel, not my Echo. So
Mhm.
no, I'm all for that. I mean, he was a clone. They were doing tests on them. This was, yeah, no, I'm with it.
All right.
And he's
la-
cool. His helmet is part of his head.
Yeah, he's very cool. Last one, kind of in the same vein. And I also don't remember exactly how dead she got, but Fennec Shand was shot and left for
Mhm.
dead, and then, day turned to night before Boba Fett picked her up, and she was just sitting there
true.
dying. And then he put some tech in her, and she also made a full recovery. But I would also consider that as a resurrection from the dead in Star Wars terms. I think she was pretty dead.
Yeah, any gut shot, is gonna take a long time to kill you. I think that's the only reason Qui-Gon died was because Obi-Wan still had to fight Darth Maul, and they were like in the middle of the planet core, and there was like no way to get them treatment in time. Whereas this one, it was dusk when she got shot, so we can say maybe only a couple hours had passed. And same thing with Sabine when she got stabbed in the stomach too. She was in a heavily populated metropolitan area. Like, of course there was going to be a hospital nearby. It doesn't bother me. for
Yeah,
some
I didn't
reason.
even include Sabine because that one makes sense to me.
Yeah. My
but-
mind was blown when we talked about that. When we're like, oh yeah, like it's just depending on where you're at. When you're getting stabbed, if you're stabbed in the middle of a battlefield, in the middle of nowhere, yeah, you're probably gonna die. If you get stabbed outside of a hospital, you'll have a pretty good chance of surviving. I feel like.
Especially when you're dealing with these weaponry, because they're theoretically cauterizing the wounds as they go, right? So I think you have a higher chance.
Yeah.
I don't know the science behind it. But no, Fennec Shand doesn't bother me because next time you see her, they do enough to address it pretty immediately with the cybernetic implants, and she like opens her little shirt and shows you, and it's like, okay. And
Mhm.
again, Fennec Shand is a character that nobody cares. Like nobody was like, oh no, she needs to be dead. Like it was so important for her character arc and stuff. It's no, you can bring her back.
I think there is
it was the episode that she was introduced where she died at the end. Like, no one had any prior attachment to her.
Yeah, exactly.
there's a trend I think where they're willing to take risks with characters that don't mean that much, like Echo, like Fennec Shand, but they are able to elaborate and tell us why they survived. Where I think it's a lot harder to do with major characters like Palpatine, where they're just like, well, we could explain it like X, Y, and Z, but then also there are a bunch of people who are going to poke holes in it, so let's not even touch it, kind of thing. Where Fennec Shand, it's like, oh yeah, here it is. Here's my gut. Here's it's all pumping away. It's like, well, no, we kind of actually maybe want some of that stuff.
Yeah, there's
Yeah, it's like-
definitely a hierarchy of the level of character and the level of care to which you need to take in their resurrection. Such
Yeah.
as, I'm going to throw this one out there. Luke, are you done? Do you have any more on your list?
No, I don't. A couple meme ones, but
Then I will throw out Boba Fett because I think that was
he was
pretty
on my
darn
list.
close to dying. Was it
We
that
didn't
part
talk
of the list?
Boba Fett.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it was. I deleted him from my section that it was apparently became all Sith, and then I never added him somewhere. Yeah, he definitely counts.
Yeah, I mean, he
Yeah.
was very
Oh,
close.
I'd have
to
been so
dying.
mad if we never talked about Boba Fett. Thank you so much.
But I feel like the way they did it made sense. And they didn't even explain it at first because he first comes back in The Mandalorian and then you get more of the flashback in the Book of Boba Fett. But I like that resurrection. I think they did a good job with it. Not just because they took Patton Oswalt's rant from Parks and Rec and literally made it, but it makes sense. I mean, that's how they would do it. And the death never really made sense. Like, this is like one of the world's most feared bounty hunter, and he just kind of like falls into this animal, and that's it. It makes sense that he would get away out of that.
I know, it almost makes less sense that he died there.
Same with Mace Windu. To me, it makes little sense that he died falling out a window. I understand that he got both hands cut off, one hand cut off, but
Just one.
still, it's a Jedi falling from a great height. They survive those regularly. I am waiting with bated breath for the day that they bring back Mace Windu. It's coming, and I'm excited for it. And I'm already on board. It makes sense because, like you just said, Luke, it makes less sense to me that Mace Windu is actually dead forever.
Yeah, I don't love that one because I think it cuts at the emotional arc of like Anakin. That's like the first Jedi that Anakin got killed and he made that decision then. But then I would have to apply the same argument to Palpatine being resurrected and it undercutting Luke's character arc. And that doesn't particularly bother me. So I guess maybe I am on board
It
with Mace Windu
undercuts
coming
Vader's
back.
character arc. He's the one who saved the galaxy by throwing him down the shaft.
Oh, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's always Anakin getting screwed by these character returns. I don't like Mace Windu that much, so I'm fine with him staying dead. If he came back, I'm not going to throw a fit, but I don't know. I'd be okay if he stayed dead.
Agreed. to
On a long
disagree
enough
once
timeline,
again.
though, everyone will come back.
Yep.
All right, last
That they
two.
will.
Kit Fisto? Question mark? Question mark? Question mark? If Mace Windu can do it, there is that moment, the part of the Mace Windu Palpatine fight where we see the same kind of part of the floor where Kit Fisto was killed, and he's not there anymore. Maybe he scooted away, went down the elevator, and went into hiding. Who knows? Maybe it was just a production error that they forgot where a particular body was in this probably 2 weeks of filming this fight. But I'm still holding my hopes out for that. And then the last one is Star Wars itself. Because as we know, Star Wars died in 1999 and then again in 2002. 2008 wasn't good for it. 2014, Rebels wasn't very well received at first. And then, of course, 2017 with The Last Jedi. And then 23 with, or 24 with The Acolyte. And it just keeps reviving. What a time.
That's not
It's
a
interesting. I don't think
resurrection,
it
though. That's just
revives, no.
invincibility.
Yes, I think that is the difference.
No, they're
there,
saying
yeah.
it's dead every time. Star Wars is dead.
But
But
it's
it
not,
can't be dead
it's
if
not
things are
coming
consistently
back.
going
it's just
on.
not dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree, obviously.
I love
Star
the
Wars will never
sentiment,
die.
though. I love the sentiment of it.
Star
right,
Wars
does
will
anyone have
never
any force
die,
for thought?
So long as Star Wars
It
lives
did
on
get
forever in our
resurrected.
heart.
It did get resurrected in '99, though. Then
Yeah,
it did
I
come
guess.
back. And there hasn't really been a downtime since then between animated shows and
Right.
prequels
It felt
and
like a
sequels.
resurrection again in 2015.
It did. Because the
does
main
that-
storyline movies. Sorry.
Does anyone have any force for thought to take us out with?
Yes, I do have a force for thought. So I was rewatching The Phantom Menace, and I was thinking about that line from Viceroy when he's talking to Palpatine, and he says, "But my lord, is that illegal?" And that's a Nemoidian accent, not an Asian accent, so it's not racist. But later on, he starts talking to Queen Amidala about cooperating because they're going to start torturing all of her people and everything. And it's like, you definitely know that's not legal. Like, for somebody who is seemingly concerned about the law when dealing with this Sith Lord, he doesn't care. Like, he's turning around and he knows he's not cooperating. He's not acting within the confines of the law. What was with his hesitance to doing what Sidious was asking him to do?
What was Sidious asking him to do? Because in Newt Gunroy's head, is that
Doesn't it
legal? He's talking
impose
about
the
the
blockade?
invasion?
I thought it was
Or
the
just
blockade.
Well, either way, I think when he says, is that legal, and Palpatine says, I will make it legal, I think Newt Gunray in his little lizard brain thought, okay, anything I do, Palpatine will make legal now, so I can do whatever I want. And that's his go-ahead in his mind to go torture people, commit war crimes, etc.
And then what is his story like after the Phantom Menace? Because he's arrested, but then he's still is he in the Clone Wars?
Yeah, he's in the Clone Wars and Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith.
So what happened to him then? He just made
It's
bail?
outrageous. After 4 trials in the courts, Newt Gunray is still the Viceroy of the Trade Federation.
Okay, they
think
say
that's
that?
about
Is
all
that
we
in
ever hear
Clone
from it.
Wars?
No, that's in Attack of the Clones. C.O. Bibble says it.
C.O. Bibble is in Attack of the Clones too?
Briefly. I believe that's his only line.
Oh, I guess I
Yeah,
need
that's
to
great.
rewatch Attack of the Clones, which is great because I just finished the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Gearing up for Revenge of the Sith in theaters next month.
That's true. Or maybe this month, depending on when this drops.
That's true.
No, it's dropping this week because Easter. Happy Easter, everybody.
That's
Oh, I
right.
meant to
Oh,
come up
yeah.
with
Easter,
everyone.
some best bunnies laying eggs in Star Wars, but I couldn't think of any.
That's weird. Huh. We'll keep
All right, well-
pondering that one.
Maybe next year, 26 Easter. Hit us up. Thanks for listening, everyone. Follow us on socials and happy Easter.
See you, Sammy.